Hey everybody, Ty here. Hope everyone is doing well. So today we're going over the tropics here, and looks can kind of be deceiving with this one, I can't lie. There have been some intriguing things that I've seen on model runs recently, and while yes, this is also holding true, I wouldn't expect anything to develop in the next 7 days. It's really into the long term where things start to get a little bit more interesting, and there's a few reasons as to why I think that is going to be, which we'll be going over in just a little bit here. Also, want to say again, appreciate the recent support. I know in recent times it's been slow, but I appreciate you all for sticking it out with me. But things might start to pick up here as time goes on, and a big part of that has to do with the video that we dropped a few days prior. It was during the weekend where we talked about the MJO. It's not a new feature, but I did say that I'm going to implement this into more of the tropical forecast and maybe also winter storms as well. And this will be the first video where we really implemented that. If you haven't seen that video, by the way, definitely go to the top link in the top right hand corner to check that out. But what I'm paying attention to right here is this particular region right here. We'll see this moisture begin to move over the course of the next couple of weeks here. And it's at this point where my interest really begins to peak, because the points that you're going to be seeing later in this video are going to coincide almost perfectly with what we're seeing right now. Coincidence? I think not. But from what I'm seeing over here also, and we don't really talk about the East Pacific much because usually impacts to the lower 48 are pretty minimal, but the MJO is pretty active over here as well, and proof's in the pudding. Look at this. Multiple storm systems that have a great chance of forming multiple invest areas, and then we have we have a remnant system right here, also a decreasing tropical storm as well. So a lot of action going on right now in the Pacific. And of course, the MJO is not a stationary feature. It moves off to the east over the course of time. This actually traverses the world every 30 to 60 days. So at some point you do get some activity during hurricane season. It's almost inevitable. Depending on how active that MJO is determined, can help determine. It's not the only factor, obviously, but it can help determine just how much activity you can get, depending on how frequent it moves around. But anyway, though, if you look over here, this is part of the MJO right here. The enhanced rainfall phase is right where we have been seeing the increased amount of activity and where we can actually anticipate a bit more. Same goes right over here towards Hawaii again. And then over time, we're going to start to see an increase in activity over here towards the Carolinas as well. No worries though, because with the way the upper level wind pattern is set up, which we'll get into in a second, it's going to keep everything kind of steered away for now. What we're really going to be interested in over the next few days as far as the Atlantic is concerned is of course towards our main development region and over towards the Caribbean, where we're starting to see that enhanced rainfall phase begin to come into play. This is also going to help increase that shower and storm activity over towards the deep south as well over the course of the next 10 to 15 days in particular. So things are going to get a little bit busier. We're kind of getting out of that little dry slump that we've been in, because really up until yesterday, even from my area, we didn't get much in the way of rainfall, but we got it pretty bad last night, and we may very well get it again tonight. You might have even heard some thunder here and there in the last video that I had done over yesterday. But anyways, though, this is the first little tidbit of evidence here. No pun intended, because the name's on here, Tropical Tidbits. But this is the first little bit of evidence that I think things are about to indeed pick up here. Another interesting little bit of information that we have here has a lot to do with the fact that we also have the decrease in wind shear here, and this is shown on both the GFS and the European ensembles here. So look in the top left corner to see that, and we're going to just put both of these into a loop here. And the main point that I would pay attention to is, of course, again, as I mentioned before, is the main development region, and of course over towards the Gulf. With the weather pattern over the lower 48 itself really beginning to pick up, more troughing beginning to occur out towards the east, typically we would have a little bit more in the way of wind shear. This is not, however, going to be the case this go around. So, with us looking at whether it's regardless of whether it's GFS or Euro, wind shear is beginning to lighten up. So this does lean into a slightly more favorable pattern for the tropics here. This is not a guarantee that we're going to get a hurricane or anything like that, but a couple observations that we'll need to be keeping track of course. Now, those two areas that I was talking about over towards the Caribbean and off the Carolina and East Coast here. Now, the Carolina threat, look at where the wind is blowing. Anything that would develop, it's going to end up staying pretty much off of land the entire time here. It's going to be a fish storm. Nothing to worry about there. It's really over towards the Caribbean where I'm most interested, especially with that wind shear being light over here. So if the storms can survive the early stages of being a tropical wave and invest area, going over towards this region, especially as we go into the next week or two, that might be something that we could end up talking about going further down the line. Of course, just because of light wind shear doesn't mean we're assured any kind of development. So, of course, we have to look at other parameters as well. This is where we look towards the moisture that we have available over the Atlantic as a whole here. Going to do the same treatment here. We're going to have the GFS and the European operational models on here now, because we don't have this feature on the ensembles, unfortunately, which kind of sucks. At least not on the website that I can access right now. But during the start of this run, we have a lot of dry air that's coming into play, and this could help limit activity. But as time goes on, we start to see that increase in moisture. And this, again, is due to that MJO beginning to come into play here. By the time we get into that first to second week of August is where things start to pick up. And again, it's also reflected on the European ensemble here along with the GFS. Looking at both of these at the same time can be pretty hard, I know. But if you take your time and look here, I'll keep it up for you just in case. Notice how we see an increase in moisture the further along we get with these model runs here. So this is the latter half of the European run here as we get towards 228 hours. Watch how slowly but surely we're starting to get more moisture in here. Now the European, however, does have a high pressure that's stuck here up towards the North African area regions here. And the North African region has a lot of dust, so that's really going to be the wild card in all of this. So depending on how strong that influence of Saharan dust is will really be the determining factor, I would say, because everything else looks like it's starting to line up relatively well. Now, I can't guarantee that, again, that there's going to be any development from this, but based off the two models here, I'm seeing some level of congruency. It's no, like I said, I can't really say for sure that we will or will not get development out of this. But between these two areas, I would say with relatively good confidence that we could see something pop up over here towards the Carolinas. Caribbean's a little bit more uncertain. And then also, with any of these storm systems that are going to be coming in over the course of the next week over the eastern half of the U.S., if we get something to form on the fringe of these frontal boundaries here, we might get a little chance for development over towards the Gulf Coast or inside the Gulf as a whole here. I think chances for that, however, are a little bit lower. We do have some interference from that dust air and dry air as a whole also, so we're kind of up in the air in regards to forecast closer to home right now. The only place I really have confidence in, again, is really towards the East Coast, and that's really going to be a non-factor for land from the looks of it as of right now. And this is also pretty well reflected on our ensemble models here, so pretty good model agreement in this case, I would say. Nothing that I would really be so concerned with to the point where I'm thinking that something is going to develop imminently. But watch the end of these model runs here. I'll point out this right here on the GFS ensemble, and this pops up right past no man's land. And to anyone that doesn't know, no man's land is about that 300 plus hour mark, so can't put a lot of merit into that, but again, something that has kind of caught my eye here. At this point, we're just making more or less small observations here. It's also during that 200-hour time frame where we start to see a couple potential points of development over towards the Gulf too. like I said, I'm not latching on to that either. I would say that odds are it doesn't happen. There's a lot of high pressure over the Gulf too within the first 7 to 10 days here, so can't really put a lot of merit into that right now. And the euro kind of has a slightly better scenario that pops up for that within those first, let's say, 7 to 10 days, for maybe a little bit of development over towards the Gulf here. But even then, it forms so close to shore based off the low pressure ensembles that not much really would have a chance to really mature into anything significant. Again, though, looking at the euro, right around that 10 to 15 day time frame and beyond, notice how we start to see an increase in activity over towards the Caribbean, again with those low pressure ensemble numbers. So again, nothing concrete yet, but do be watchful if you're going to be over towards the Bahamas, the Caribbean over the course of the next couple of weeks here. There could be a chance that something forms. No guarantees, but definitely something you might want to raise a brow to. And no, not like The Rock. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and shift our focus now towards our ensembles. This is basically a blend of models here. We were just looking at two really many models here. And again, this kind of coincides perfectly with what we were seeing with that MJO here. This point was more active, and look at all the low pressure ensembles that pop up here from all of our models. And a few of these do develop into possibly another named storm. While this would be a fish storm, which is the best case scenario, if we were to go further along here, look what starts to happen over here, right towards the area we talked about. Maybe just a little bit further off towards the east, but it does progress into this area by the time we get into the 10 to 15 day range. Keep in mind, this model that we're looking at only goes 240 hours out, so that's 10 days. So we start to see some early signs of development over here towards the Antilles, and it's at this point where my interest really begins to peak here. And then lastly, we do have these couple of low pressures, again, as I mentioned before, that kind of pop up towards the Gulf, but I would say that I wouldn't be worried too much about those, simply due to the fact that most of these would, if they were to develop at all, form so close to land that they wouldn't mature into anything. But inevitably, what that's going to do, regardless of development, is increase shower and storm activity over towards the southern states. And if you saw anything on our August outlook here, that things are going to get notably busier over here towards the south. So this kind of falls in line perfectly with that CPC outlook that we discussed a few days prior. Speaking of which, that also will be tomorrow's video, because the final update for August will be in sometime tomorrow. And that's all I got for you guys on this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. I'm not really going to even say it at this point. But in any case, appreciate you all being here. The content train continues tomorrow. Till then, have a wonderful rest of your day.